Pete. Notes ready. Very good. I like that. Awesome. How you been, man? And by the way, I'm probably going to be relying more on you and the others who show up to the chat for this because I didn't like. I have some questions as usual for this film, but I didn't put down a lot. I think I only put down like 3 questions to guide the discussion because I think for the most part we kind of do a good job as a group covering the films. So yeah, so by all means, bring up whatever points you want. Bring up as many questions as you want for everyone, and we'll jump into that. Let me check and see how many I had. The questions. Yeah, I only have 3 questions down. So, been watching Joe Bob all day. So which Joe Bobs have you been watching today then? And did you watch the ones last night? I only stayed up for the first one. I can usually only stay up for the first one because I have a hard time staying up late on the weekends just because I work early in the morning, so during the week. So my biological clock is, going to bed on the earlier side. But I stayed up for the first Joe Bob, which that one last night was the longest one he's ever done. Like the fact that it went past midnight was crazy. Missing AEW Double or Nothing, but I'm taping it. We'll watch it later. I appreciate that, Uncle Pete. I mean, honestly, that does mean a lot to me that you're missing something that you really love to be here for this. That speaks volumes to me, and I do appreciate that. Greetings from Virginia. What's up, Blue Room? I knew you'd be here, man. Oh, Uncle Pete, you're watching Troma's War. That one was kind of longer than I thought, film-wise. It was kind of fun. It was a decent time. Deadbeat at Dawn. Oh, you watched that one already? I need to catch up on that one. I'm probably watching that one sometime during the week. I've been watching with my buddy Rich, who shows up in chat from time to time. We'll just put our phones on speakerphone and sync it up and watch together. So we'll probably watch Deadbeat by Dawn this week. Check in with Tequila is my lady. Marshall. Got it, man. Tequila is your lady. Always. What's up, Heather? How you doing? Uncle Pete saying hi to the room. Nice, nice. Love it. It's a long episode, over 3 hours, but yes, it was fun. Yeah, so the Exorcist 3 one, I was pretty excited that he did Exorcist 3 because that's a film I've had on my list for a while, been meaning to get to watching. I didn't really like it a whole lot, to be honest. Except for the Brad Dourif stuff, like, his acting in that was ridiculous. It was so good. And by the way, everyone, if my speech sounds a little bit different, it's because I bit my tongue really, really hard. Like, so bad that it's, like, bruised. So talking's a little tender, a little sensitive. So I may sound a little bit different because I'm moving my tongue a little differently when I talk. So my apologies for that. Yeah, but the Exorcist 3 one, that was super long. Didn't really like the movie, but like I said, Brad Dourif, his performance just insanely good in that. But, I mean, script-wise, whatever. Plus, I don't know if people feel me on this. George C. Scott in that movie looks like he's in his 70s at least. He was 63 during the filming of that. Let that sink in, because he looks way older than that. That dude lived a hard life, obviously. Dead Meat recently did a kill count on Tourist Trap. I thought that was funny. Oh, really? Dead Meat did a kill count on Tourist Trap. Yeah, here's the thing. So, as soon as Joe Bob had done his last drive-in episode about Tourist Trap, it gained a lot more traction. Now, it had already been gaining some traction prior to that, but after he did it, went like crazy. And, I'm transparent about it. That's where I learned about Tourist Trap, was watching Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. So, yeah, that was the first time I saw Tourist Trap, and I've watched it a few times since, because it's wacky. That's the thing I love most about his show. I like some of his rants. I think they're kind of funny from time to time. Sometimes they go on a little bit too much or go like way off base and off topic. But he's really good for dredging up these kind of older films that you didn't know were out there that are definitely worth watching, either because they're legitimately awesome or because they're so terrible that they're awesome. So I love that about him. I kind of mess with those. He also did a video on Cabin in the Woods. Nice. I'll have to check that out, Marshall. I'll have to check that out because me and Cabin in the Woods, I love it. Oh, by the way, one of you in chat, was it Uncle Pete? Who was it? Or maybe it was you, Marshall. Someone had said that I needed to check out, was it Red Letter Media? It was someone who had done a really in-depth breakdown of Cabin in the Woods, and I watched it, and it was awesome. So whoever that was, let me know. It was really cool. Heather, doing good. Didn't get to rewatch Tourist Trap like I had planned. That's fine. Everyone's got stuff going on. Horror Hound weekend canceled their con, but they're streaming the film fest. Oh, really? That's cool. When Heather, when are they streaming that film fest? That's a cool idea. I like that they're doing that. That's really awesome of them. My Puppet Master 12 Blu-ray box set finally came in. Ooh! Have you watched any of that, Blue Room? Because if I got that, I would at least watch the first one on the first day. And how does it look on Blu-ray? Because I've only seen those on DVD quality. Who is Joe Bob Briggs? Marshall, do you actually not know who Joe Bob is? Which is, it's fine if that's the case, but I want to make sure you're not just joking before I go in and give you an explanation. That's cool about the box set. Yeah, that is good bad flick. Yeah, oh, yeah. Good bad flick, for sure. For sure, Uncle Pete. Cool. So, if there's anyone out there, I know, Uncle Pete, maybe you want to take the reins of this to start the discussion. I want to defer to you, Uncle Pete. You said you showed up with notes, so why don't you put a question in the chat or start with some comments, your overall feelings, or whatever you want to say about Tourist Trap overall, and then we'll get things going. And like I said, I think only Uncle Pete was here when I said this, but I only have 3 questions written down for Tourist Trap to kind of guide things, because I think that the way we've been doing these discussions, you guys have been throwing so much out there that we've been going pretty well. I don't necessarily need to have a ton of questions prepped, so I only have 3 this time, but we'll get in depth on this. We'll do what we need to. All right, Blue Room. I think Tourist Trap would make a good film for those looking into the horror genre. It's scary in parts, silly music in parts, not any real amount of gore. That's a good point, but I would also argue that it's so weird that may make people think, what is horror all about? Like, is this like the meat and potatoes of the horror genre? Like these really odd-ass movies that just don't seem to make sense and are just like freaky? Just a thought. Right now, actually, Thursday to Sunday. Okay. Didn't know until today, sadly. Thanks for that info, Heather. I'm going to look that up after we're done with the stream. So thank you for that. No, Good Bad Flicks was the channel I wanted you to check out. Okay, got it. So it was you, Uncle Pete. Okay, it was Good Bad Flicks. I don't know why I was thinking Red Letter Media. Someone told me about something having to do with Red Letter Media recently, so... Yeah, I honestly don't know who Joe is. I just hear you talk about him often. Okay, yeah, so Marshall, so he's like a horror movie host, kind of in the vein of, I don't know if you know people like Sven Gulli or like Elvira or... people like that who would, he was on the show Monster Vision that was on TBS back in the 90s, and was it in the 80s and the 90s? I think just the 90s, actually. And so basically he would be like late night, they would be showing, crappy horror movies, typically crappy horror movies, and when they would do the commercial breaks, they would also have Joe Bob, who's a character, his real name's John Bloom, would have Joe Bob kind of talk about the film and give these kind of like, he would do some things where he'd go on like these funny kind of rants, but then other times he'd give like really cool information about the film and kind of like the making of it and stuff like that. Just like little known facts about those films. So he has a show now again on Shudder, on the Shudder streaming service, called The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. So currently it's in its 2nd season, and he does double features every Friday night for, it's 9 weeks. And then he does like specials here and there. So hopefully that answered your question. But if you have follow-up questions, Marshall, let me know. I'll start about Tourist Trap. Cool, Uncle Pete. The sound design in Tourist Trap was incredible. I totally agree with that. I totally agree. And the first scene with the blood dripping out of the pipe was pretty damn cool. Yes, that blood dripping noise was really, really, really well done. And that's the thing, is like a lot of people don't take Tourist Trap super seriously because it is wacky. It's totally wacky. The concepts are ridiculous. But like Uncle Pete's pointing out, that sound design is amazing. And that's one of the things I think in general with film is that, well, especially horror, is that people tend to see something in a horror film that's weird, or it's too gory, or it's too violent, or it's too scary, or whatever, and then they'll kind of disregard all the great stuff about it. You know, maybe it has an amazing soundtrack, maybe the sound design's amazing, maybe there's one actor that just does a phenomenal job. There's kind of always something to appreciate, and I would hope that people would at least focus on that, even if they don't like the film as a whole. I had that just today with a film I watched as a Shudder screener. I agree, Uncle Pete. Sound design was excellent. Yeah, Marshall. Uncle Pete. Chuck Connors was awesome in this movie. He was a great, unsuspecting villain. I agree with that. Uncle Pete. Now, Joe Bob Briggs, when he talks about Chuck Connors, he's over the top about that guy. Like, he's obviously a fanboy for that dude, but I think he did a good job. He definitely did a really nice job in that role, and it's a wacky role, and I have a lot of respect for actors who have these really out there kind of wacky roles, but they're very serious about it, and they bring their A game to do it. So, a lot of respect for him for playing the role the way he did. You wanted to like him. He was charming. And, you know, that's a good point, Uncle Pete, is that Slauson in that was charming. And he also was telling the story about how his wife passed and, you know, his brother wasn't there anymore. And, yeah, he felt sympathetic at first. Up until you realized that he and Davy were the same person, you were very sympathetic to him. But then when that whole him and Davy thing happened and you're like, oh, he's kind of nuts, then you're just like, oh, I don't know about this guy. But that's a good point of, you know, it makes the point that not everyone is perfect or terrible. You know, it's not just good or bad. There's so much gray in between. Tanya Roberts is hotter than a California forest fire. Which one was Tanya Roberts? She was the lead, right? The lead female. Chuck Connors was menacing. Yeah, he was menacing when he needed to be. My favorite of the Chuck Connors portions was when he was as Davy in the basement. That whole sequence is my favorite, when he's like putting the paper mache on the person's face. Yeah, and I go around and say this, the whole thing that he was like, your world is dark. I say that around the house because I made my wife watch the movie, and she keeps being like, stop, that's so creepy, just stop. Because it is kind of creepy. It's, yeah. So he's basically a horror critic. Marshall, yeah, because, yeah, well, when he's not doing the show ordeal, he also writes for magazines, and, you know, he has some of his own books of, like, breaking down films and reviewing. So, yeah, he's basically a horror critic. Didn't Briggs point out the lack of breasts? Yeah, that was one of his things from in Tourist Trap specifically, Blue Room. I think you're right. Yeah, he has a tendency to go off on that tangent. He thinks blood, breasts, and beast are the three things that need to be in good horror films, which, you know, I understand that from his era for like 70s, 80s, because that's kind of like what those films were, but it's kind of different now, and you don't need that, in my opinion, but for those older films, like, that's how they were. Did you guys know Chuck Connors played in the MLB and NBA? Pretty cool fact. Yeah, it is a cool fact, Marshall. Whenever there's someone who's multi-talented, it gives me way more respect for them. Like, someone like Rob Zombie's a good example. Like, I don't really like a whole lot of his movies, but I really, really respect that guy and like him for the fact that he's very talented musically, and he can write and he can direct. I mean, so much respect for him for that. The other part with sound was when he killed the girl on the table with the wax on her face. The sound of the beating heart, yep, was excellent. It added so much to the scene. I agree with that, Uncle Pete. And that kind of speaks to, like, just, like, the little details, the little extra touches in that film that just help, like, it ups the creep factor. And that's great. That's a good point. Yes, you did point that out, Blue. Marshall, well, to that, Blue and Uncle Pete, the film is rated PG, so they can't really show nudity. It's PG? Like, I didn't even think about that. That's kind of crazy that it would be PG too, though, because I would think at least like PG-13, to be honest, because of like how creepy and scary it actually is, especially with all the mannequins. Like when the mannequins' mouths just like drop, like the mandibles at the bottom, just mandibles, the jaws at the bottom of the mannequins just like drop down so much, and then there's that we're like like that music, which is brilliant for a creepiness factor. Yeah, that stuff's pretty scary. Tanya was the dark-haired girl that was killed by the Indian's knife. Okay, gotcha, Blue Room. Thank you. I know I think it's great that a PG movie could do horror so very well. Yeah, but here's the thing about pointing that out, Uncle Pete. Would it be a PG movie if it came out now? I would say no. I think it just was kind of the MPAA at the time wasn't as strict with that type of stuff. And now they're more strict. I guarantee that'd be a PG-13 now. Well, I guess I can't say guarantee. I think it would be. Because there's a chance it wouldn't. True, Uncle Pete. They execute the concept well with the mannequins and making them scary. Definitely, Marshall. Definitely scary. Dolls and mannequins. Which mannequins aren't even really used all that often. But they're just as creepy as dolls. I mean, they're just a bigger version of dolls. Like it's the adult form of a doll. So, ooh, there's a concept. A horror movie that has dolls and mannequins, and the mannequins are basically the adult versions of the dolls. Obviously, they'd be evil and killing people. It was before the PG-13 era that started with Gremlins, I think. Did that start with Gremlins? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Who remembers the sign that read, "Too mean to die"? Yes. Question, was the cowboy always there? Was it the camera angle that made the cowboy seem to appear out of nowhere? Now, I would need to go back, Blue Room, and really, really dissect that scene, but from what I remember, it does seem like that cowboy just came out of nowhere. Like, he wasn't there initially. And then it's just like, surprise! It's like we didn't show you some corner of this room or something. Or there was a whole wall that you missed. It's just like one of those things. Continuity issue. It's not hard to have that happen with a film when you're doing it. Because you got to be really on your toes. With it being PG, they could show it on TV and increase the viewing of it. That's true. That's a good point, Uncle Pete. They could do that. They should do that now. Just put it on cable. It's PG technically. Marshall said he remembered that Blue Room, but it was confused. Oh, you were confused on it too. Yeah, like I'm saying, same thing. I feel confused about that. It's weird. So, let me throw out like one of the questions I have. Okay, so here's a good question, kind of like to the core of what the film tourist trap actually is. Do you think that Slosson's always knows what he's doing, or is it kind of like a split personality ordeal that he has going on? So is it a situation where he just has different urges and he just goes with them and he like knows that he's doing good things and bad things, or he's totally unaware and Davy is a separate entity than Slauson? I did like how they did not explain the the telekinetic abilities. You like how they didn't explain it. Yeah, I could see that. I do think that's kind of something that you don't necessarily need an explanation for. It kind of like adds to the mystery of it. It actually kind of makes it more scary because it's more mysterious. It's like, how did he get that way? He's some sort of freak of nature. Red Dawn was the first PG-13 movie, it looks like. Oh, okay. Thanks for looking that up, Heather. That's Red Dawn. Okay. It's been a long time since I watched that. I should rewatch that one. It was a good flick. Although, I think a rewatch of it now wouldn't be the same. I first saw it in college, so some time ago. Who has more mannequins, Davy or Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018? That's a good question, Marshall. I mean, I would... Theoretically, I would say probably Slauson. Probably Slauson. That'd be my vote, but funny question. I like that. I think Gremlins or Gremlins 2 started the trend to make a PG-13 rating. I mean, Heather said it looks like Red Dawn. I think he knew it was just that diabolical. Okay, so Uncle Pete, so you think that he actually knew and he was just like happy with doing that? Like he was just like being a nice guy to intentionally lure people in and then putting on this character of Davy to like scare people more, up the fear factor because he kind of like feeds on that maybe. But Heather, you were right that Red Dawn was the first. I think that was a part of his plan and he played it strategically. Okay, Marshall, you're kind of saying basically the same thing that Uncle Pete's saying. Yeah, I could see that. The remake of Red Dawn was shit. I didn't see it. I did not see the remake of Red Dawn. It sounds like a bad idea. I mean, I knew when it came out, and I remember not having interest. But going back to the whole Slauson versus Davy thing, I think it plays best if you view it as him knowing what's going on and it not being actual split personalities, because then it's just like, how like messed up and sadistic really is this guy? That he's literally like acting like he's two separate people in order to, play out the story, the scenario with these people and really just toy with them and up the fear factor before he kills them. It's just like a sick fantasy, basically. I like that aspect of it. I like thinking about it that way. Cabaret was the first PG movie. First PG in 1972. Wow. Yeah, MPAA has been around for some time. That was his gimmick, so to speak. He would lure tourists in and then kill them, hence the title. I didn't really think about that. To be honest, I didn't really think about it that way. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Tourist trap. He literally brought the tourists in, trapped them. That's a good point. Can't believe I didn't really think of that. Good point. Way to go, Uncle Pete. Spielberg wanted the rating, I believe. Really? Spielberg wanted it? The whole rating system's kind of jacked up. If you want to see a really good documentary about the rating system, it's called This Film Is Not Yet Rated, by, I think it's Philip Dick or something. It's a good documentary about kind of the beginning of the MPAA and how they operate and how they're basically in bed with the studios, so they kind of like give a pass to a lot of studios on certain films, and with independent film it usually gets hit a lot harder with ratings because they don't have a established relationship with the MPAA the way a bunch of big studios do. It's pretty messed up, but there's some really funny, fun things in there about like how Trey Parker and Matt Stone have dealt with the MPAA, the creators of South Park. He did move the tire after the first guy died. He moved it to the sign to lure in the other kids. Yeah, it's a good point, Pete. He did. He definitely did. I can tell you took notes now, bringing that up, because that's a really minute detail, but that's a good point. The tension worked well in Tourist Trap to me. I agree with you, Marshall. It did. And this goes back to, like, people just think it's like a wacky film, but it's disturbing. Like, it feels tense, and a lot of that, I think, has to do with what we were talking about for the sound design and the soundtrack. That drives a lot of it. But also, Chuck Connor's acting and those little details of things that they do to really, like, lure the people in, up the tension factor, up the fear factor, and then he swoops in and does his thing. And the fact that the whole telekinesis thing was put in after the fact, like that wasn't even in the original script, that's kind of funny to me, because I think that has a large portion of the charm to the film, in my opinion. Like, I like that weird aspect to it. Slauson, Norman Bates, Psycho, 1960, though with the supernatural twist. Yes, but instead of having like something like his psychotic break came because of his mom, it's his wife. His wife and his brother, Horan. You know, get that out of frame. It doesn't need to be there. And I thought it was hilarious that the cheating he referred to as Horan. I just thought that was really funny. Norman Bates, Hitchcock is great. Yeah, greatest of all time. Yeah, by the way, on the topic of Hitchcock, Rear Window, really good. Rope, really good. If you haven't seen those, they had some Hitchcock on Shudder about a year ago, maybe. No, I think it was back in like August, September of last year. The genesis of PG-13 is directly linked to Spielberg, who in 1984 became a lightning rod for parental ire. Quote, I created the problem and I also supplied the solution. I invented the rating. It's an interesting quote, Heather. Thanks. Thanks for putting in the work, doing that research. That's cool. Yep, like Uncle Pete said. That's awesome. Thanks for looking it up. Marshall. So, Carlin, do you like the movie Rubber because of the telekinesis like this movie? I love the movie Rubber, Marshall. Are you a fan of Rubber? Actually, any of you in chat. Do you guys like the film Rubber? I'm a big fan. It's actually been a few years since I last watched it, but I own it on DVD. I love that movie. And it's not I don't love it because of the telekinesis. I think the telekinesis is fun. It adds a lot to the film, but I love what the underlying themes are in that film, what it's really trying to say. It's a good flick. Yeah, that's dope, Heather. Yup. So it also seemed real quick that Slauson had other roles he was playing, because it wasn't just Slauson and Davy. He was also doing like kind of like a motherly thing when he was putting like the blonde wig on, and then he was kind of like acting like a child at one point too. Rubber's on my watch list. Added it because I heard you talk about it. Oh, cool. Then I'm glad I talked about it because I think more people should definitely watch it, Marshall. Let me know what you think when you do finally watch it. I really dug it. It's weird. It's about a tire that kills people with telekinesis. So that's probably about as weird as you can get. But really look at what the underlying theme is, what they're really trying to say. There's a deeper story there. And if you really want me to tell you right now, like it won't. I don't know if you like to kind of like figure out what the underlying theme is yourself. It won't ruin any events of the film, but if you want me to let you know now what the underlying theme kind of is, I can. Otherwise, I won't say anything about it. Question. What do the following movies have in common? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, Tourist Trap, The Howling, and Reanimator. What do they have in common? I don't know, Blue Room. That's a good question. I mean, they're all... Are they all shot in the same state or something? I liked Rubber. I love movies that use an oddball killer. Yeah, Heather, definitely. Oddball killers. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, you can't just have, like, some sort of, been done before a million times type killer. I mean, you can because that gets done all the time, but it's just not, like, it doesn't land well. It's not interesting. Uncle Pete, back to Tourist Trap. In the beginning, I thought it was weird that the kids so early took a ride from a stranger, but that goes with the time period of the movie. I agree with that. Yeah, like hitchhiking back in the 70s was, like people did it. People were hitchhiking back then. I mean, it was in the 70s that the whole thing came to be about FBI profiling for serial killers. Like the 70s is where serial killing like really started. being found out and being talked about and having like a really big impact. So yeah, you're right. It was a sign of the time that they were just like, oh, here's a person. They mean well. It's some random dude. Let's have a ride with them. They're all horror movies. Well, yeah, Marshall. Those are all horror movies. Good point. You took the easy way out on that answer. Uncle Pete, I know about Rubber, but thought it was dumb, but I'll give it a chance and watch it. And that's the thing, Uncle Pete. Maybe you won't like it. Maybe it's not your thing, and that's fine. It's just there are movies that kind of need an additional watch, and I would say that Rubber probably is one of those. Answer: art director Robert A. Burns. Oh, really? That's a good resume, in my opinion. That's a really good resume then for Robert A. Burns. Any relation to Ken Burns? Joking. Which, interesting fact, when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school, this is so odd. I was into the Civil War when I was in elementary school. I thought it was very fascinating. So at that age, I was watching the Ken Burns Civil War documentary repeatedly. I'm a little ashamed of that, I guess. Interesting, Uncle Pete. That kind of applies to today because of Uber. People getting a ride from a stranger. Yeah, Marshall, I see what you're saying, but I think people feel like it's safe because it's set up by a business. Like, you're right that, like, you're literally getting in the car with a stranger, but at the same time, like, you have some information on them on your phone, and a lot of people, I think, trust that the company vetted this person properly. But, that's not always the case. I didn't think of that, Marshall. You were right. Uber. Yep. Same with Airbnb. People staying in strangers' houses. Weird time we're living in. Yeah, Marshall. I've done Airbnb a few times, and the first time I was gonna do it, I felt really weird about it. And I was just like, I'm staying in like someone's house, and it just feels weird. And like my wife and I have stayed at an Airbnb where literally we were staying in a different part of the house, and the people who owned it were still there. We didn't see them at all. Actually, we've done that twice now. We didn't see them at all, really, but I mean, you could hear them in other parts of the house, which is kind of odd. I thought Rubber would be pretty stupid when I heard about it, but it surprised me. Yeah, same with me, Heather. The first time I was going to watch Rubber, I'd seen a trailer for it, and I was like, that looks dumb. And I have a friend who I like to watch really dumb movies with, and we make fun of them. And we sat down and watched it together. And when it was done, we looked at each other, and I was like, I kind of like love that movie. And he was like, yeah, it was like actually really good. We were like, we thought this would be a terrible film, but it was so good, actually. So surprising. Did you guys know that Davy's nickname is Plasterface? I see people refer to him with that name in horror chats. Really? So I'm assuming that's just kind of what fans have made up, Marshall. That's my guess. Plasterface, did not know that. That does sound like a cool killer's name. Yeah. I mean, close to Leatherface, but Plasterface works. Who was happy with the ending of Tourist Trap? Oh, yeah. Blue Room? Yeah. I like it. So, I won't say that. I will tell you what I think the end of the film meant, but I would like some of you to tell me what you think the significance of the very end of the film was. And then I'll give you what I think. And yes, I was happy with the ending. I thought it was cool. Heather, I've also heard good things about Rubber. Not really any bad reviews. Yeah, man. True Uncle Pete, it sounds sick. Yup. The end blue with the girl in the car was eerie as hell. When I first watched it, I had to go back to make sure what I saw. It gave me chills. Yeah. I mean, it has impact. You don't really see that coming as an ending, especially because she's kind of the heroine. She escapes and you assume that she's going to be fine. But then why is she driving in this car with her dead friends who are mannequins now? And it's just disturbing. It seems very off. I didn't like that for the final girl drive away with the mannequins. It felt kind of dumb to me. Okay, Marshall. Yeah. So here's my question to you then, Marshall. If you didn't like the way it ended, what do you think would have been a better ending for Tourist Trap? I'd be interested to know what you think. What were your thoughts, Blue? Or Heather? Yeah. Everyone. And this just further points out how, no one's going to have the same experience with a film. Even if we all like the film, not everyone's going to love the ending, or not everyone's going to love the soundtrack, or the acting, or the script writing, or whatever, or the camera shots. I have plenty of times where I'm talking to my buddy Rich, and we'll totally disagree on films, but then we'll agree on other films, but we'll disagree about certain aspects of those films. So, film is a very personal thing. That's why I like to every now and then remind people with my reviews that this is, solely my opinion. I'm not trying to push it on people. I'm just putting the information out there on how I feel about it, because I'm very passionate about film, and I just want to talk about it. So, specifically horror. Oh, Phil, what's up? Phil's Creepy Videos. What's up, Phil? You like Tourist Trap? We like Tourist Trap. Awesome, man. And you have it on Blu-ray? Nice. Yeah, I have it on Blu-ray at the moment. I plan to watch it with the director's commentary sometime relatively soon, because that would be really interesting. I would have liked if Chuck didn't die and she escaped, so they could have set up a sequel. Sure. But I would argue, Marshall, that they did set up a sequel. And the reason I would say that they did set up a sequel with the ending is that the all the stuff, all the trauma, all the terrible stuff, and psychological stuff that she went through throughout the course of Tourist Trap could have been her moment of having that kind of psychological break that breaks her and makes her the way that Slauson was when his wife and brother were found whoring. I think that's kind of how they were trying to play it, as saying, like, where he had his psychological break and it sent him down this path. She just went through so much, and they're showing that she has had now a break because of, she's like lost it, basically. Why else would she be driving with all of her friends as mannequins in this car and looking like she's loony, like she lost it? So I think there is a sequel there. It was nice of Molly to retrieve Jerry's head for the final drive. Yeah, Blue Room. I like that. That's a good one. It was nice of her to pick his head up. Yeah, I mean, she collected all her friends. I agree, Marshall. A sequel would have been cool. Yeah. Well, it's never too late. If people pay enough attention to Tourist Trap now, and people start maybe some online petitions to get another one made. It's owned by Full Moon Features. I think if there was enough fan interest in it, they make all sorts of kind of like throwaway films now. If people really wanted a sequel to Tourist Trap and they knew it, I think it could happen, really. By the way, would you guys like a sequel or remake of Tourist Trap? Sequel. The problem with remakes is that people have too much of an attachment to it typically, and if the film was good, it's hard to make the film as good or better, which is what people look for. So just doing a sequel is a lot better, because even though it's tied to that first film, it's still its own film, so it can be its own experience. And there's less of those expectations as there is if it's a remake. That's just my opinion on it. Hate remakes, Marshall. They're like 5 horror movie remakes that are good. Yeah, and as we discovered, they all have "the" in the beginning of them. Right, Uncle Pete? Was anyone surprised that the good girl was the sole survivor, as explained in The Cabin in the Woods? Right. No, not surprised by that, because that's kind of how it was then. Cabin in the Woods, though. I'm glad we had a discussion on that one. So good. So, Carlin, kind of like the Candyman ending, where the final girl lost it as well and transformed into Candyman. But in Tourist Trap, she now has the mannequins and could be the next Davy. Yes. That's what that's what I was saying that I would see as a potential sequel. So yeah, Marshall. I think that would be a good sequel. Like basically she then becomes the new Slauson. And she has like those she acts basically the same. And maybe she even kind of in a way inherits that telekinesis if you want to keep it going that way, because there, like we were talking about, there's no explanation for the telekinesis, so you don't really even need to explain if it moves to her. The Thing, The Blob, The Fly, The Hills Have Eyes, The Evil Dead. There you go. There you go, Uncle Pete. Uncle Pete, you do have a point. There's only a handful of good remakes. Yeah, only a handful of good remakes. In addition to only a handful of good remakes, there are actually very seldom situations of this, but I was talking to my wife about it yesterday. Instances where the sequel to a film is better than the original. And I would argue that case for Hellraiser 2 and Phantasm 2 are better than the originals. Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th too, Uncle Pete. Yeah. Oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th as good remakes? I didn't see the... wait, I saw portions of the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'll have to go watch that. The Friday the 13th, it was fine. Yeah, it wasn't bad, but I didn't like it all that much. The problem for me with a remake like that is that there's nothing new, so for me just retreading the same ground is just seems pointless. So even if they do a good job of that type of remake, it's just I just like I watch it and I'm like, why? Like, did we need this? Nah. In my review, I mentioned that I was surprised that Jocelyn Jones' character didn't try to escape when given the chance, but the director had an answer for that. Really, Heather? What was the answer for that, by the way? Because I'm intrigued. I'd like to know. And Heather, you say in your review. Where is your review? Go ahead and plug that on there. Are you doing it on a YouTube channel, or are you doing it on like a blog or something? Let us know. I did like those remakes, Marshall. Yeah. Okay, Carlin, I do like that idea to set up a sequel. Oh, thanks, Marshall. Yeah, I thought that would be a really cool setup. So I'm glad you are with me on that. Sorry, I don't even know what to do with my hair at this point. It's just quarantine, man. Well, quarantine. But Molly doesn't have the power. There is no special powers moving to anyone. I mean, you could just do that, though, Blue Room. You could just do that. I mean, Slauson had those powers for no reason in the first place, so you could just make those move. I'm also a fan of the zombie Halloween movies. I think that's not a popular opinion. No, you're right on that, Uncle Pete. It's not. Well, it's close to half and half from what I've heard, to be honest. So, I need to revisit those and give them another shot. I'm a fan of the zombie Halloween movies too, Uncle Pete. Michael being ruthless. Marshall and Uncle Pete, sounds like you guys have very similar taste in film, which is awesome because I love it when people are coming together and realizing we're all loving some of the same things in horror. You're right, Blue, they left the telekinesis origin, so they missed an opportunity to give the power to Molly. They could just do it. Yes, he was the scariest Michael Myers. Speaking of Hellraiser, Carlin, I just watched them for the first time since they added them in Shudder. Cool. Great movies. Now I know why you have a poster of the first one in your vids. Yeah. And also, I don't know if I had mentioned, or if you'd seen a video where I did mention, that poster in the background is actually signed by Clive Barker, the guy who wrote the original book and directed the first Hellraiser movie. I was very, very honored to be able to meet him last year. Super nice guy, really cool, really gracious. he was on my list of like would be amazing to meet horror celebrities. So yeah, you can't really see it in my videos, but there is a signature on it, and that's a Japanese poster for Hellraiser. Yes, he was the scariest one. Oh wait, I already read that. Oh, and also, Marshall, I'm glad that you liked Hellraiser. I think Hellraiser's really good. I think the first two are really, really, really good. The third one is watchable, decent. The fourth one, I'm still okay with. And then after that, I'm just like, eh. The director explained that real-life people, when kidnapped, often say they didn't escape when given the chance because they couldn't believe what was happening to them was real. That's interesting, Heather. I could see that. It's kind of this, like, do you trust the scenario idea of, this person's, like, holding me captive. I see an opportunity to get away. Is this real, or do they have their bases covered? Especially with someone like Slauson, because it really does seem like he kind of had every angle worked out. Yeah, it just seems like he had this larger-than-life diabolical plan. That's hype. Carlin didn't know it was signed. Yeah, you can't see it in the video, really. It's, like, impossible to see because it's kind of small. But, yeah, it's really cool. That's, like, one of my favorite signed things. Also, I have a small poster from the remake of The Thing by John Carpenter, signed by John Carpenter when I met him a few years back. So that was also awesome. Yeah, I heard the Hellraiser franchise dips hard after the third one. I think the fourth one's still interesting. Like, it's still fun. But, yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say after the second one, it's starting to have a noticeable decline. And then, I'd say once it hits the fifth one, it's just like... But they've done, like, 9 of them or something, and they're talking about a remake. Well, they've been talking about the remake of the original Hellraiser for over a decade at this point. It just keeps getting passed around as a project. I don't think it's going to happen. Especially because the last time I heard, Clive Barker was supposed to be doing the directing on that one, and he's not in the best health. So I'm not sure that's going to happen. Overall, I enjoyed the film. I'd give it 3 naked ladies, but no breasts. Going for a swim out of 5. Got it. I love your ability to tailor your ratings, Blue Room. They're always fun. I do have a few more questions. Do these youngsters in Tourist Trap seem way too nosy, or what? I mean, the fact that they were there with this dude and he's supposed to be helping him out, and he literally says just hang out here, and then they go and nose around in his house, which he specifically told them do not nose around in. And on top of that, how the one lady, the one who gets I think she's the one that gets choked with the scarf, climbs a trellis in order to go into the second floor window. I mean, that's a lot of effort to put into going into someone else's house when you're not supposed to be there. Like, aren't these people too nosy? Like, it's a crime, too. It's like breaking and entering. LOL, Blue Room, for me, I don't need nudity in every horror movie, but that's just me. Yeah, I agree, Marshall. I don't really care. I think he was just making a joke, though. But yeah. I do small reviews on Letterboxd now. Okay, cool. I did them on a blog for a long time before that, but got bummed out trying to come up with long reviews. So Heather, you like doing like writing of reviews? See, I don't have the patience for that. I've done that before, like actual written reviews, but I just don't have the patience anymore. It's so much more satisfying and easier for me to, talk to a camera about it. So I have a lot of respect for you for doing that, because it's a lot of work. The first girl who died was walking through the house, was very nosy. Yes. And then everyone else, it's just, yeah, just don't get it. It doesn't seem realistic in that sense. But then again, is the telekinesis realistic? I mean, the whole film's not realistic, so. Yes, the girls were nosy and were checking out everything. Yep, Marshall. Yeah, they were. Yeah, I don't do anything with Letterboxd, so I'm with you, Marshall. I'm not sure about Letterboxd. But I have a phone right here, so you know what? I can look it up. I'm going to do it real quick. Letterboxd. Your life in film. That's what it's called. Track films you've watched, save those you want to see, tell your friends what's good. Oh, okay, so it's a little like, is it kind of like Stardust? I don't know if you're familiar with Stardust. It's like an app on your phone where you can post like 30-second movie reviews. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about this. Letterboxd is kind of like IMDb. You can rate and review if you want to. Can follow others and comment on reviews. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of like a non-video version of Stardust app. That's cool. That's nice. Okay, let me pull out. I think I had one more question about Tourist Trap. Oh, we already covered that. I didn't ask the question, but we already got to it. Okay, so that's actually... I don't have any more questions about Tourist Trap, so if you guys have anything else you really want to say about it, we can continue to rap about it. Overall, I think it's definitely a film worth talking to other people about, getting them to sit down and watch it. To date, I've talked 3 other people into watching Tourist Trap, so that's a win. It was weird that Slauson had a mannequin of his wife that had human flesh. What was he doing with that? The movie goes to dark places. I mean, what I believe you were insinuating, Marshall, is what I would think was going on there, for sure. Especially since it was still his wife's flesh. Gotcha, Heather. Thanks for letting me know. Yep, about Letterboxd. Thanks for letting me know too, Heather. Yes, it does go dark. He puts the mask on Molly and starts kissing her. Yeah, Uncle Pete. And this is PG. 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 Did my link for my review go through? No, it looks like not. I don't see it. It might have to do with like a setting that I have. Do this. Go post it in the comments when the live stream is done, and we'll do that. And I'll approve it at that point, because it things like that just automatically go into like potential spam comments. So I have to like actually go in and look at them and make sure they're not spam and approve them. So either it's already sitting there, or after the live stream, just go and comment on it, and then I'll approve that. So we'll put it out there. I haven't seen it, Heather. That was weird as well, Uncle Pete. Yeah, the kissing is weird. Four out of 5, Marshall. That's good. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I have a hard time kind of. I don't know. I have a hard time rating films like Tourist Trap against other films, just because I feel like it's not serious. You know what I mean? Like, I view Tourist Trap as one of those, like, so bad it's amazing films. Not like, oh my god, it's just an amazing film. That's just me. So I would actually rate it 2 different ways. I would rate it, which, you know, I have a review out for Tourist Trap on my channel, so I believe I did rate it 2 ways. I don't remember what I gave it for both those ratings, but you have to do one of these, movies.com, otherwise YouTube has a heart attack. Yeah, that's right, Blue Room. YouTube does not want to allow people to put links up. They really don't. But I can approve those. Like, those usually get held, so I'll look for it. Not right now, but later. So, if we are potentially wrapped up on Tourist Trap, what does everyone want to talk about? And I will throw something out there. I watched a screener for a Shudder exclusive coming out on Thursday of this week called Confessional. I can't talk much about it, obviously, because it's not out already. My no spoilers review for it will be out on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I don't recommend it. Sorry to say, I do not recommend it. Unfortunately. I was hoping it would be good, but I didn't dig it. But, you know, it's all subjective, so. We'll do, you can search for Big Spot, or Blog Spot, Mermaid Heather. I think, did you mean Mermaid Heather? As well. Can search for the movie from there. Cool. Any recommendations for next live stream? I'd recommend Old Boy or The Collector. They said they would allow links, but then delete most of them. I see. The Collector. Check out a lot of the movies you recommend in your reviews. Thank you. Oh no, that's good. This is a new trailer for a new Puppet Master movie. Ew. Another new one? Because they did The Littlest Reich a few years ago, and that was actually a good time. The Collector. Okay, so what do you guys think about this? I'm going to throw this out there. I would like to give... I have a film that I watched this past week. I think you guys would most likely dig it. Even if you don't dig it, I think it would be a great discussion. So do you guys trust me to just pick a movie? I mean, I can tell you what it is during this live stream, but do you trust me to just pick a movie, or would you really like to, vote it out each time? Because I would really like to do this movie because I think there's a lot to talk about, and if you have not seen it already, I think everyone has to see it. Who's into horror? Now, some people could debate if it's legit, like straight up horror, or if it's just like a film with horror elements, but I think it's pretty horror. Need to see that trailer. Would also add Hellraiser since it was added on Shudder. Scheduled to be released in June 2020. Dude, that's like super soon, Blue Room. I didn't know about that. Blade the Iron Cross. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull that trailer up on my phone just so it's sitting there so I remember to look into it when I look at my phone later tonight. Blade the Iron Cross. Blade the Iron Cross. Yep, there it is. Cool. I'm going to check that out later. Thanks, Blue Room. I do like some Puppet Master. Since you like weird movies, Carlin, I highly recommend The Night of the Virgin. It can be found on Shudder. Okay. Thanks, Heather. Actually, I'll just pull up my Shudder app right now. And I do like weird movies. I definitely do. Let me just add it to my queue. Yes, I trust you. Thanks, Uncle Pete. I trust you. Thanks, Marshall. It's a solo Blade movie. Oh, Blue Room, a solo Blade movie? Sweet. Okay, so Uncle Pete and Marshall, you guys said you trust me on this. I say for the next live stream, we should do the film The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It is on Netflix right now. I think it's a very disturbing film. It feels disturbing the whole way through, and I think it's a must-see. It's a must-see, in my opinion. So much to talk about. The Night of the Virgin. There it is. Okay, thanks, Heather. I just added The Night of the Virgin to my list for Shudder. Another Puppet Master film is in the works. Working title, Puppet Master Arians Ahoy. Wow. They're just gonna... with the Puppet Master. Hey. I mean, I like the Puppet Master films. How disturbing would you say it goes? Oh, Heather, by your reaction saying very good choice, you've seen it. So Marshall, it's It's not disturbing to a point where, like, I wouldn't say it's like the most disturbing film that I've seen, and I don't think it's any like one particular thing in the film that's disturbing. I think the way the soundtrack is, the sound design, how kind of odd the characters interact with each other, like it. I guess disturbing isn't the right word for it in that case. It's more unsettling. Like it feels unsettling the whole way through, and you feel very engaged and interested and kind of tense. But it's not too much. Like it's definitely not the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in a horror film by any means. But they do a good job of just having this very unsettled feeling all the way through the film, and they achieve that in a few ways. I have the movie but haven't seen it yet. Definitely watch it. It's on Netflix right now. Did I say that? I can't remember. I'm down for that movie. Cool. I played Martyrs with my little cousins, and I had to take it off. Okay, it is not Martyrs is brutal. Like that's Pascal Lagier. That stuff is brutal. It is not as tough as Martyrs. Trust me, Marshall. It's not near that. So don't worry. If we ever do a Puppet Master, I'm ready for it. I mean, since we're gonna keep doing these live streams, we will get to a Puppet Master, I'm sure. All right, I'm down for it, Carlin. What's the name again, so I can write it down? Marshall, it is The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and it's on Netflix at the moment. It has Colin Farrell in it and Nicole Kidman, so there's two big names. It's really good. It's by Yorgos Lanthimos. He did films The Favorite, which was actually an Academy Award nominee last year. He did The Lobster, which sounds interesting. And he did the film Dogtooth, which is actually on Shudder right now. Which, because I like The Killing of a Sacred Deer so much, I'm going to check out Dogtooth. And The Lobster, which is also on Netflix at the moment. And The Favorite, when I can find it. So people know The Killing of a Sacred Deer is an A24 horror film. So if you're familiar with kind of how A24 does their horror, it's a little deeper. There's a lot of thematic stuff going on. Kind of like some examples. Green Room, Hereditary, Midsummer. There's another one I've seen that I can't remember. Tusk. I know a lot of people hate Tusk. I actually like Tusk, but In Fabric, that's another one. Enemy. It Comes at Night. I'll watch the movie after the stream. Okay. You don't have to jump on it that fast, but hey. I think I want to rewatch that film, actually. I just watched it this past week, but I think I really want to rewatch it. It's, I think it's one of those things where I'll catch even more the second time. Because you know where it's going to a degree, but you also don't ultimately know where it's going, which I like. And I was kind of baffled when I first watched it, because I was just like, I feel like they're telegraphing things too much. I feel like they're just like letting you know, this is where we're going, and there's going to be no surprise, but that's not the case. There's a surprise to it, so let's do it. The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I'm excited. I'm real excited. Without spilling it, the main character has to make some choices about his family that makes a good discussion if you would be able to do it. Yeah, good point, Heather. Yeah, that's a good way of vaguely putting it. I'll watch this movie. Yeah. Blumhouse is greater than A24, though. Is it? I don't know. For my taste, I like A24 films more. And for Blumhouse, it kind of... For me, it depends what Blumhouse film. Because didn't Blumhouse do that Truth or Dare movie? Will you review the movie, Carlin? Yes. Yeah. So, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I already shot my review for it. I had it scheduled to go up next Saturday, but I will delay that so it goes up the weekend after that. I probably will put it up that next Saturday because, well, I'll just let you guys know now. I'm putting out tomorrow will be the review for the first Tremors movie. And then every Sunday after that will be the next Tremors movie. So I'm going through all 6 of the Tremors films with reviews. And then there's actually supposed to be a 7th movie coming out in October. And then I just found out that I can also review the TV show, because all the episodes for the Tremors TV show are on YouTube. So yes, I kind of went off on a tangent. Yeah, I will have a review up for The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And it'll be up before the next live stream in 2 Saturdays. I'll just put it up that same day. And I will warn you that that review I did is about a half an hour. It's one of the longer ones. But that's because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to break down in the film. And I was really passionate about it too. Because I liked it a lot. Excuse me. Allergies have been like drying out my throat and terrible. All right, so what does everyone else have? What do you want to talk about? I have to take off and get dinner ready. I'm on grill duty. All right, Uncle Pete. Thank you to all. Stay safe and God bless. I'll see everyone in 2 weeks for the next stream. Awesome, Uncle Pete. Looking forward to it, man. Keep it brutal. Hey, you keep it brutal, man. Hopefully you're making steaks or something awesome. Always good having you, Uncle Pete. Yeah, so is there any other horror stuff people want to talk about? Let's do it. Let's talk about whatever. Otherwise, if people are tapped out, we can just cut it off. Just let me know what you want. If you want to talk about more stuff, bring it up. We'll chat about it. If you guys are like, we're good, we can just cut it there. I mean, however, that's the thing with these streams. I never want to go longer than 2 hours, because that's kind of how much I can handle at a time. But if we end up cutting it shorter than 2 hours, if we cut it an hour or whatever, that's fine with me too. It's just as much as you guys really want to talk about. Thoughts on Dewey coming back for Scream 5? So I've only seen the first 3 Screams, and the first one I like quite a bit. The second one is fine. The third one, I think I was on that. So I haven't even seen the fourth one, so I don't know how it would fit in with everything, but I mean, I guess my real answer on this is it's gonna matter what they do. Like how do they reincorporate him, you know? I like David Arquette, so you know, if they can write a good script and legitimately incorporate him in a good way, then I'm down with it for sure. What are your thoughts on it though, Marshall? Which did you like best, Mandy or The Color Out of Space? That's a very easy answer for me. Not a popular one, most likely. Color Out of Space by a long shot. Because I didn't like Mandy. And there are a few reasons for that. One, I don't like Panos Cosmatos as a director. I think visually he knows what he's doing. He has awesome visuals, but the films he makes have no substance to them, really. Or what substance is there is so thin that it's terrible that they end up being like 2-hour movies for, you know, the content that's basically half an hour. It pisses me off. Also, the fact that he made a really terrible movie called Beyond the Black Rainbow, which, once again, the visuals are great, it looks good, but there's no substance to it whatsoever. And he made that movie with the residuals that his father got from his involvement with the film Tombstone, which I think is a great film. So he just makes me a little salty. I'm excited and I see other old casts signing on soon. Oh, really? You think so, Marshall? You think other casts will sign on? Like Nev Campbell? What about Jamie Kennedy? I guarantee Jamie Kennedy would sign on. Because he's I don't think he's doing a lot. I haven't seen those, Heather. Are they on Shudder? So Mandy is on Shudder, Marshall. Color Out of Space is not. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if they do get Color Out of Space, because I think they have a pretty good relationship with Spectre Vision, who's the studio who put that out. So, because, yeah, Spectre Vision did Mandy as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Shudder ends up getting Color Out of Space. I hope they do, because then I would encourage more people to watch it, and I would potentially watch it again, because visually it's really awesome, and it's just a good story. Plus, it's the triumphant return of Richard Stanley, who was so unceremoniously fired from the set of Island of Dr. Moreau movie, which it wasn't really his fault that things went to hell with that film. He was a promising director before that happened. He did Hardware and Dust Devil, and he was a huge rising star, and then that just... What age did you guys start watching horror? So, Marshall, that is a interesting question. Like a whole horror movie? Because that was when I was in college, so probably about 19 years old. My parents were like super controlling with what I was able to watch while I was living with them, you know, like elementary school through to high school. It was just one of those households. So I didn't really start really watching horror until college, when I was able to kind of watch whatever I wanted to. Although my parents did let me watch X-Files when I was in high school. So that was kind of like horror. And then I would, you know, when my parents weren't around, I would, you know, be flipping channels on TV, and I'd catch like a Friday the 13th movie or something, and I'd, you know, watch portions of it, but I'd also get like kind of scared. So really 19 is really when I started watching horror. Cool, Marshall. Yeah, I mean, check out Mandy, Marshall. You know, I'm not a big fan of it, but a lot of people really like Mandy, and I can say about it that the visuals are very awesome. It looks really good. It's just, for me, I don't like that it's basically like a 2-hour movie with a, you know, story for a half an hour movie. It's just something I don't enjoy. Oh, good, Heather. You got Color Out of Space from Redbox. I hope you like it. I really liked it. I really did. Plus, you know, if you liked Nicolas Cage and Mandy, you'll like Nicolas Cage in Color Out of Space. He's just got these kind of weird ways of delivering lines that are just like, it's weird when you hear it, but then it's also kind of fun, and he does that in there. And he also has like a mini freak out scene, not anywhere near what he does in Mandy, but it's just like a little taste of it, and it's fun. You're like 10 or 11 when you got into horror, Heather? Yeah, that's early. Starting around 5 years old with Child's Play, Marshall? Wow. Dude, seeing Child's Play at the age of 5 was probably... Yeah, that would be scary. At the age of 5? Yeah. I did see one horror movie when I was really young. I wasn't supposed to, because I was curious about it. I was over at a friend's house playing when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and the kid wanted to watch the movie, and the mom was like, "Oh, is it okay with your parents?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Okay." She didn't like call to verify or anything, so we watched Poltergeist when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I didn't sleep at all that night because I kept going into my parents' room because I was like really scared, because Poltergeist is really scary. But they did let me watch The Burbs when I was super young, because they didn't think there would be too much horror to it, but that also scared me at a young age. That is an amazing movie, by the way. I love that movie. Joe Dante directed that, I believe. Yeah, Joe Dante. So good. It's one of the best horror comedies, in my opinion. My dad made me watch Halloween 2 with him, and we talked about it after because I was scared to watch horror movies. Nice. I mean, not nice that you were scared, but it's kind of funny. Yeah. It's just so interesting because, like, hearing you guys talk about how you were able to watch horror movies at a young age, and I know people who are parents who let their kids watch horror at a young age. It's so weird and foreign to me because that's not how I grew up. It just makes me wonder, like, what would my perception of horror be if I was allowed to watch it at a much younger age? And also, how many more films would I have seen at this point? And would my taste be different? I don't know. Chucky was scary, but in a weird feeling. I liked it, so that's how I liked horror movies. Okay. Cool, Marshall. Yeah. I mean, I was late in life in comparison to getting into horror, but once I did, I was fell in love with it. Like it's the genre that keeps on giving because there's so many subgenres within horror. It's amazing, and I feel like the most creativity in film is in horror, not just from a story standpoint, but also from like a practical effects standpoint. Um, there's so much practical effects and costuming and stuff like that was pioneered by the horror genre that then gets used by other people. I mean, look at the impact that people like Tom Savini and um, why am I blanking on his first name? Rick Baker, and Rob Bottin. People like that got used by a lot of other people. Oh, also the documentary "You're So Cool, Brewster" about the making of Fright Night. I didn't realize how many of the practical effects in that were like cutting edge practical effects that ended up being used by a lot of other people after the fact. It's pretty cool. Ooh, my favorite horror subgenre. That's a tough one. Okay, so like I like really good creature features, I guess, but I feel like there aren't a ton out there that I love that much. But like creature features like something like a Ghoulies or something like uh, Gremlins is a good one. Jaws, Piranha, things like that. I really like creature features, the subgenre. That's a lot of fun. Slasher, I love slasher as the subgenre. That might be my favorite. I really like Giallo. Giallo's been a lot of fun. I just started exploring that one kind of recently, but that's great. But what about you? What about you guys? What are your favorite subgenres? I'm done with zombies. I've been so over zombies for like at least 5 years. Became a fan of horror after that, so it's all good. Yeah, Heather. Yeah, man. You gotta get scared first and then come to terms with it, I guess. Yeah, Marshall Slasher. Yeah. Nice Heather plus Halloween 2 is a classic. It is. It is a classic. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with the slasher subgenre. I feel like a lot of the most iconic horror films come from the slasher genre. And there actually is a very close relationship between the slasher subgenre and the giallo subgenre. So if you haven't seen any or much giallo, you should definitely check it out because you'll see the similarities. You'll see where giallo basically informed slashers. And it's really cool. The nudity in the movie was a little awkward though. I could see that, Heather. Do I watch or look away? Dad isn't saying anything, so I will watch it. Yeah, I remember those moments, Heather, watching movies with my parents, and all of a sudden there would be a nude scene or a sex scene or something. The feeling of uncomfortable in that moment is like palpable, and it's very uncomfortable. My least favorite is torture porn. That's why I can't enjoy the Saw films. Yeah, I get that, Marshall. I was into it when it was like the hot subgenre. Like I liked Hostel. I liked Hostel 2. I still like those movies to a degree. I like the Saw films, stuff like that. But I've soured a bit on the torture porn subgenre. I feel like it's just it was just shock for the sake of shock, and I'm not as into that anymore. I was at one point. That was more my like earlier stages of being into horror. And I thought I was like, this is what horror is, being as extreme as possible. What are some good giallo films? Ooh, there's some really good Giallo films out there. So I haven't seen like all the Giallo films. There's actually a lot that I still want to see. Currently on Shudder, they have Deep Red by Dario Argento. Deep Red is potentially my favorite Giallo film by Dario Argento. Really good. So definitely Deep Red. Check that one out. They have Don't Torture a Duckling by Lucio Fulci, I believe is still on Shudder. You can check that one out. It's not one of my favorites, but it gets cited by people a lot as being a really good one. I didn't like it as much as a lot of people, but it's good. Blood and Black Lace by Mario Bava, if you can find it, is really good. It was on Shudder at one point. I don't think it's on there anymore. Also, Dario Argento's film Tenebrae is really good, and that's on Shudder at the moment. And Cat O' Nine Tails by Dario Argento, also on Shudder still. I would recommend all those for good Giallo. Yeah, watching a sex scene with parents is always weird. Yes, it is. Yo, what's up, Rich? What up? I like paranormal films and have a thing for found footage. Heather, you and I are very different. I don't like paranormal films. The paranormal subgenre, I don't like. Possession films, I don't like. Haunted house films, I don't like. There are those outliers, though, where I do like them. Like, obviously, Exorcist is really great. I really do enjoy that one. There are some haunted house ones I do like. I'm trying to think of them at the moment. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know there are some haunted house ones I do actually like. Crimson Peak would probably be one of them. And found footage, I really don't like found footage. I'm okay with some of them. Oh, Rich, you're watching The Changeling right now? What do you think? What do you think thus far? Doesn't George C. Scott still look old as hell? Way too old for what age he actually was. George C. Scott. God, that guy lives so hard. Yeah, the found footage films are decent for me. I think the Blair Witch Project is overrated. Well, here's the thing. With Blair Witch Project, me personally, I didn't see it when it initially came out. I saw it for the first time, 4 or 5 years ago. So I'd seen a lot of found footage before seeing it. So it doesn't have the same impact as it did when it came out. I think it's one of those films that for when it came out, it was really good and it was really important because obviously it started that whole subgenre, but it doesn't age well in my opinion. You know, not the fault of the people who made the film though. And that kind of leads me to something I was talking about just yesterday, I believe, about how you have to watch film with the right context because you need to understand like when a film was made. Like I was saying that just recently that I got into an argument with one of my wife's cousins because he was saying that the movie Rosemary's Baby is a terrible movie because it's just like not good. And he was saying by today's standards, and I was just like, yeah, but this movie was made in the 60s. Like, you can't compare it to today's standards because it wasn't made today. And you just need, I feel like when you watch older movies like that, you need to keep in your mind what the context was back then. Like, what was society like? What could they and could they not do with a film? How good was acting really back then in comparison to now? The answer to that is not that good. So when you see, like, a decent performance back in the 60s, it's amazing. It would be amazing now. I mean, for back then it was amazing is what I mean. But it just seems like average now. Oh yeah, you're liking The Changeling. Yeah, it's a good flick, Rich. Yeah, we got done with Tourist Trap about like 20 minutes ago or more. 20 to 30 minutes ago. We didn't have a ton to talk about with Tourist Trap, but Tourist Trap is Tourist Trap. If you want to say some other stuff about it, Rich, go on, man. Blair Witch was the first movie I went alone to go see. When the credits rolled, no one got up for the longest time and was pretty silent. Never seen that happen before or since. That, yeah, I mean, that's impressive. And I remember, like, when it came out, what people's reactions were like, hearing about that, how kind of, like, freaked out people were, because it seemed real. Like, there were people who legitimately saw Blair Witch and were just like, this is a real thing. Because it seemed that way. Because no one knew what found footage was. And that's important to remember. It's a very important film for that reason. That is true, Carlin. Context is important. That's what I say about Hitchcock's Psycho. Totally. Totally, Marshall. Yeah, Hitchcock's Psycho. When you look at that film and consider how ridiculously good that looks for the time it came out, like, it's a masterpiece. For the time it came out, it is an unbelievable masterpiece. You watch it now, and, like, don't tell anyone. Just make someone think that that movie was just made this year or last year, Psycho. And they would just be like, oh, it's not that good because I've seen stuff like that before. Yeah, but it was important back then. And what movies did it inspire, and did it inform, and it spawned off of that film, basically. So much. Heather, did you watch it when it first came out? I think would have enjoyed it more if I saw it when it debuted. Probably. They do screen it in small theaters in my town, though, from time to time. Huh. That's interesting. See, I wish I had a place that I could go for, like, re-screenings of, like, older horror films, but I don't. Well, there is a theater like an hour and a half away or so. Yeah, I went to see it when it first came out. There was also a special on Sci-Fi that played into it being real. Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, Heather, I did see that special that was on Sci-Fi. I didn't see the movie, but I saw the Blair Witch special on Sci-Fi. And that was well done. It was interesting, and it did make it seem real. The remake of Psycho, though. Oof. Yeah. Yeah. Remakes, man. Remakes. That's dope, Heather. Yup. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there are any films that I saw some time ago and then I feel very differently about them, and it was more of like at the time it was amazing, and then watching it again in the future I was like, oh, it didn't hold up that great. I think it's not horror, but Gladiator. I remember when it initially came out, I saw it in theater and I loved it. And then like 8 years later or something, I watched it again and I was like, this is not a good movie. I don't like this. Just didn't hold up. Are you guys excited for the Chucky TV series on Sci-Fi coming next year? Yeah, I'm excited about any new horror, especially if it's tied to something older that was good. So yeah, I would say I'm quite interested in the Chucky TV series. It could be good. I think Don Mancini is going to be involved with it, the guy who was involved with the original. So if that is the case, that makes me even more interested. Someone who really knows what they're doing, having control of it would be great. I'm also excited for watching the Tremors TV show on YouTube because I just found out last night it's on there. Hopefully you guys enjoy all the Tremors reviews coming out. I admit the Blair Witch is kind of boring to watch now, but that ending still gets me. Yeah, no, it's definitely a good ending. It's just with everyone knowing, what found footage is nowadays, it just doesn't have the impact, because the impact, like the best impact of it was kind of believing it was real and seeing that it was portrayed as real. Found footage now being an established thing just doesn't have the impact. Yes, Don Mancini is writing the script. Oh, then yes. Yes, Marshall. That should be good. Yeah. And if you're a fan of Chucky, I don't know if you know about this. There's a podcast. Mick Garris, the director, he has a podcast called Postmortem, and he interviews people from the horror industry, basically. And he had a really good interview with Don Mancini, so I would recommend checking that out. He has good interviews with a lot of people. He had one with Richard Stanley that was really awesome. He had one with Joe Bob Briggs that was good. Toby Hooper, that was a really awesome one before he passed. John Carpenter, there was a good one on that. Stephen King, he had one. That one was solid. He just did one with Guillermo del Toro. They're good interviews, trust me. Oh, Robert Englund. The interview he did with Robert Englund, amazing. Loved it. That guy is a cool brainiac. I'll tell you that much. What that guy talks about is just amazing. Well, guys, I think I'm really winding down and losing energy here, and my voice is kind of starting to go downhill. But it's been fun. I think I'm going to kind of stop it here. But remember, the killing of sacred deer for not next Saturday, but the Saturday after that. What's that date? Same time, obviously. That will be June 6th. Saturday, June 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll do it. I'll check that podcast out. Yeah, definitely check that podcast out and let me know what you think. I think it's really excellent. I've been looking for more horror podcasts. I only listen to Dead Meat podcast at the moment. I don't listen to many horror podcasts, to be honest. The main one I listen to is that one, that Mick Garris one. That's like it. The only other one that I listen to every now and then is Faculty of Horror with Andrea Subasati and Alex West. That's it. Keep it brutal, Carlin. Keep it brutal, Marshall. Keep it brutal, Heather. Keep it brutal, Rich. I think that's everyone who's still in here. I will check just to make sure. Oh, Rich is gone. So Heather and Marshall, you guys keep it brutal. Don't forget the Horror Hound Weekend Film Festival. I won't. Thank you very much, Heather. Thanks, guys, for being on here. It does mean a lot to me that you show up and talk, because this is it's like book club, but for horror movies, and I love it. I love that I can talk to you guys, and you're really cool. So, thank you.